Hello, my magical friend, and thank you so much for tuning in to the flip through of this big, beautiful, overstuffed junk journal that I've made to share this week. So I've called it She is Magical, and the inspiration for everything in the book is the gorgeous waterhouse painting that I've used to decorate the cover. So what I love about this painting is that the woman pictured is doing something crafty. She's sitting at her weaving table with this beautiful tapestry that she's working on. And you can tell through the window that it's a beautiful sunny day outside, but there's still something in the color scheme or the palette that he's worked with that makes it look a little bit introspective. For me, dark colors always represent keeping our eyes closed, or solitude, maybe meditation, maybe exploring the realms of a dreamscape. And the fact that she's not sitting in deep concentration staring at her work, the fact that she kind of looks like she's gazing off into the distance with her hands behind her back, that tells me that what she's doing is not bound by a rigid time scale or a deadline or something. She's kind of at her leisure. And for me, that's what crafting is all about. That's what it is to make a journal. I always take my time and find just the right materials or just the right colors and enjoy the process. And it looks like that's what she's doing here. And for me, there's something very magical about that. And of course, Waterhouse and all of the pre-Raphaelites for that matter, he was inspired by the concept of a magical woman, the mystic power that lays inherent within every single divine feminine embodied, which is all of us. Everyone has that within us. And so she kind of represents the spirit of the crafter. And really, she is magical, isn't she? So her red dress has inspired all of the red details throughout, and that pop of blue in the piece that she's weaving inspired all of the blue accents. So there's a lot of red and blue, and as I do with all of my journals, I love to include a natural crystal or gemstone of some kind in every book because, as I've mentioned in previous videos, next to paper crafting, my other passion is crystal healing. And so I've made a frame for this Waterhouse beauty out of natural tanzanite chips. And tanzanite is a gemstone for mystical awakening, third eye visions, self-empowerment, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and claircognizance. So all the clairs, being able to see clearly, intuit, know things without knowing how you know them, sense things without knowing how you're sensing them. And again, those are divine feminine powers and abilities. And so working in this journal, keeping it in your space, just having it around will radiate the third eye awakening power of tanzanite. So before I open it up and show you everything that's inside, I would like to tell you a little bit more about the cover. So you've probably already noticed the boho tassel. This is the biggest, boldest, most luscious tassel I think I've ever made. I picked out all kinds of beautiful yarns and fringes and tassel trims even that were falling kind of into the same color scheme as the other stuff on the cover. All of this is thrifted and upcycled, so some of it is vintage, some of it might be new. I'm not sure how old any of it is, but I love all the texture that you get when you put lots of different kinds of yarns and things together. And so the reason it looks so lush and full is that it's actually two tassels that I tied together as one, and that was so that I could hang them symmetrically from this beautiful piece of upcycled jewelry. So I found this in one of the jewelry jars that I love to pick up at antique markets and flea markets and thrift stores. I don't know what it was originally. It was probably a piece of an earring or something, but it looked so cool next to the other reds here. And yeah, I just used a couple of jump rings, tied all of these different cool bits of trim together. From a little bulb pin, I dangled another piece of thrifted jewelry. You could actually take this off and wear it as a pendant if you wanted to. It's just a costume piece, but really, really pretty. And to kind of hide where I've tied this together, I put a really pretty trim rosette and then a piece of an earring that was another upcycled piece. That was actually an earring that my mom gave me from her old stash that she said she would probably never wear again. So I've got kind of my whole family in on the act of finding random broken papers and jewelry things for these journals. So anyway, I adore this tassel. I think this is my favorite tassel that I've ever made. And yeah, the closure is a wraparound piece of sari fabric. And this particular type of fabric, it's not silk, it's a vegan-friendly faux silk, but whatever they've made it out of, it is like a static magnet for cat hair. So believe it or not, I did actually run a roller over this before filming to try to get all the fur off, but there's still a little bit of cat hair on it, as you can probably see. So I would suggest anybody who's allergic to cats maybe avoid my Etsy shop because I can't help it. They shed. So yeah, the beautiful bottom of the journal is decorated with this piece of embroidered sari trim, and the back fabric is a gorgeous kind of a brocade that I found thrifting. And I wrapped this all the way around, and then I sewed around the edges so it's a very, very secure pocket. And I love how the bird's tails kind of come together to create this stunning sort of an eye looking motif or a floral motif. So yeah, that's how it looks when I take the envelope out of the pocket. And so yeah, this was kind of an indigo colored envelope that I coffee dyed to give it some grungy texture. And then I took some gold paint and a stencil and did like a really rough golden kind of detailing on it. I stuck this little gray flower that I fussy cut here just to kind of mirror or echo the look of that one there. And then inside, I put a set of stickers that are the artwork of Alphonse Mucha. And I thought these are also, you know, examples of magical looking women. And instead of going ahead and putting them in the journal and getting overly, you know, heavy-handed with my decorating, I decided to leave those so that whoever buys this, maybe you, whoever gets it, will be able to make those creative decisions yourself. I should also point out, so around the tanzanite gems, I stuck some really beautiful gold lace that kind of looks festooned. It sort of has that three-dimensional sort of draped quality, and that matches the really beautiful kind of draping motif on that sari trim. And then these are bejeweled pieces of a vintage sari fabric, so really pretty. And then that's just another piece of junk jewelry added to decorate it even more. So in the front pocket, I've put a couple little things. First is a journaling card, blank on the back, just kind of inked to look a little bit older, so you can write down maybe your intention for what you want to do with this journal, maybe a personal mantra, maybe the date that you start working in it, whatever you like. And the front image is the goddess Saraswati. And in the Vedic tradition, she is like the artist's muse. She's the goddess of music, art, creativity, and writing, literature, wisdom in general. And so keeping an image of Saraswati in a journal helps to ensure that you don't suffer from the dreaded writer's block or, struggle to think of what to do in the book. And I've started including my signature in the books that I make, just in case you want it if you're a journal collector as a piece of art. So the title of the book, She's Magical, and so are you, because you are, and then just signed and dated 2023. And I did this just on a piece of recycled packaging. So you could leave that in the pocket, or you could put it anywhere you like. And I'll just leave Saraswati where she is for now. So yeah, here we go. Finally, 10 minutes in and I've opened the book. So it's lined with handmade khadi paper from India. It's like a cotton rag paper that's been hand stamped with a really cool paisley motif. The front pocket is this beautiful multicolored embroidered sari trim. And there I put a journal card with the sun, the moon, the stars, butterflies, just blank so you can write on that. As I've mentioned in other videos, I always strive to put decorative things in my books, but also leave room for journaling. This is a stenciled coffee dyed paper that somehow, guys, I don't know what I did differently here, but it turned out shiny. And all I use for my coffee dye is a mixture of coffee with baking soda, because, pro tip, the baking soda neutralizes the acid in the coffee, so it makes it like an archival quality instead of a highly acidic paper. But yeah, that time maybe I left it too long, or maybe it's the plastic bin that I coffee dyed it in, but somehow it turned out shiny. So there's not much you could do with this except maybe cut it up or tear it up and use it in collage. But despite the shininess, I think it turned out really beautiful. And if you're the kind of person like me who enjoys different kinds of textures in your book, then that kind of thing is like crafter's gold. So to go with the Saraswati in the front pocket, I've also included the goddess Lakshmi, and she's the goddess of abundance, prosperity, generosity, manifestation. You see that her one hand is raised and there are golden coins flowing from it. That represents the constant grace or the constant flow of blessings as long as you remain generous. So if your hand is always open and giving, the universe will always be providing for you. So she kind of swivels around, so you can use this space here for journaling. And she's held on with a brad that I've decorated with another piece of jar jewelry. It's that pretty golden heart, and it kind of looks like it's one more coin in her flow of coins. So yeah, as well as flipping down so you can journal here, or you could even, you could put something there just to demonstrate, like use it as a tuck spot. And also you can flip Lakshmi down and do some secret journaling on the back of her. So yeah, this little piece just flips over for more journaling space. You've got all that journaling space. I wanted to hide the back of the brad, but I didn't want to glue it down. And that's because this way you can take it off and maybe put something else there if you choose to. So this page is a beautiful book nook with a window looking out into the countryside. It reminded me of the view from the window in that front image. And my feeling about this page, the reason I wanted to include this image, is that we can't always choose where we are, but we can always bring our journal with us. And so if you have to be at work or at school or, out and about somewhere and it's not really your happy place, just open up your book and here is your happy place. I've often said to my mom and my auntie that I may never be able to build my dream house, but I can make my dream book. So maybe that's a little nod to that. This beautiful printable from the paper Cameo, I just decorated it with a little fairy sticker. And then there's a kind of a tuck spot belly band made out of beautiful gray and gold sari trim. And this is an envelope also made by the Paper Cameo. And I decorated it with a little bit of just smudged gold acrylic paint to give it some shine, and then stuck a fussy cut sari flower just to decorate the top. When I was in art school years and years ago, one of my classmates was obsessed with the artist Botticelli and the way he depicted hair. And she said that it's just so avant-garde for the time, and if you look closely at the way he's painted this woman's hair, these are tight little braids, and then at the bottom they twist around with like the bottoms of the hair coming out like little tassels, and it's woven with pearls. And she's got some kind of a brooch on top of her head. It's just so cool. It would be very hard to replicate that hairstyle now. So yeah, the envelope, I've added a magnet closure, just put this pretty little detail, and then hid a magnet inside under this little medallion. And I left the inside of the envelope with just a really light print so you can easily journal over that. And inside I put a copy of an antique lithograph that shows ceremonial items from Buddhism. And I kind of gilded the Buddha in the top corner using some different shades of gold and copper watercolor paint. And then the back, I just inked it up to make it look super, super old. And of course, there's all your writing space for that page. Yeah, it's a fine balance, I think, that we find as crafters between heavily ornamented books and then room to actually work in them. And of course, the other thing is these really patterned pages, like this one here behind the envelope, those make great backgrounds for collages and stuff. So here is a wise old owl. Often you see owls as representing the goddess, especially in Greek tradition. I think it's Hecate or Hecate has an owl. Correct me if I'm wrong, any of you historical scholars. But yeah, I love this owl specifically that came from, of course, another jewelry jar. It had one black eye and one empty socket, so I glued a natural amethyst gem into that eye. Amethyst is a crystal for the crown chakra, which is like our inner energy center that connects us to the universe. And I put this owl on a brad, so when it swivels upwards, you can turn this page and access this beautiful spread. And you could just leave it here, but I kind of like how it looks, keeping these pages together. And to kind of reinforce that for the brad, I just stuck a little piece of vintage wallpaper as a snippet there that you can use. Lots of journaling space if you like to write with a gel pen or something. This beautiful frog familiar is from Release the Craftin. I put a stamp of the Statue of Liberty, and just because, of course, Lady Liberty is one more magical woman. I really like how the colors look here, like all the beige for writing, but also really intense blues and reds. I like deep colors. Like, I find a lot of crafters tend to go with neutrals and with a muted color palette. That's not me. I love bold colors, bright colors, so why not play with them? In this pocket, I put a print of one of my pieces of Victorian ephemera. This was a postcard I found in a Victorian scrapbook, and I printed it on cardstock, backed it with some vintage music paper from 1935, and I picked this specific piece of music paper because "While the Moon Shone" is one of the lyrics. And of course, over these beautiful ships that are sailing away, we see the full moon shining. And I just kind of inked the edges to make it look more vintage. This piece is a print of another piece of ephemera from that same Victorian scrapbook. I copied it also onto cardstock, put gold acrylic paint around the edges. It flips down, so you've got all that space for journaling. And I deliberately tore it here and then filled in the tear and glued it back together with some gold paint, inspired by, I think it's called kitsugi or kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing a crack with gold. And that symbolizes the beauty in our so-called imperfections, or the areas in our lives where things go wrong, but we grow from them and become better for them, where a little mar on an otherwise perfect beauty doesn't take away from the perfection, but actually adds character and adds uniqueness. So this little detail is a reminder that we shouldn't strive for perfection. We should just be who we are and be proud of that. And kind of to go with that Japanese influence, there's a Japanese pagoda with some cherry blossoms on the other side. This page is made from player piano music. This is kind of filled with holes that were punctured, and back in the day this could be loaded into a player piano and it would read that like music, sort of like a giant music box. I made a pocket here from one of the printables in Tailor Made Journals shop. I love this particular printable set. I love kind of cutting up the smaller ornaments. I think it was called Renaissance, something like that. I'm sorry, I'll put a list of the printables I've used in the description, but it just looks so cool there. And I put another image of Lakshmi with Saraswati and Ganesha, who is the remover of obstacles. The back is just kind of a tatami mat print, so lots of space to journal. Doubled up my fringe here. There we have that Botticelli beauty, but printed a little larger. And I think this might just be my favorite page. And pardon me, because I quite often have multiple favorite pages in a journal, but this is something I did once, I think last year, in one of my first journals that I called Magic in the Midnight Garden. And I loved it, and I decided to redo it, but I do things differently each time because I think all of us artists are like that. So I coffee dyed paper and tore a semicircle out of this part and more of an uneven circle out of that part. Painted some gold vines and then stuck down some vine and flower textile elements. And the illusion I want is like the depth if you were walking into kind of an overgrown garden and everything that you'd see. So really fun. And then inside that circle, I stuck down another fussy cut flower from a piece of the same sari that I got these out of. And it's actually an interchangeable piece. So this is the back, and you could also put it this way in the book. And you have this beauty framed in that little garden. So I kind of felt like the colors in this mucha print looked a little bit washed out next to all the dark teal, which is why I kind of made an alternative, which is the flower. But it's kind of up to you how you want to have that in your book if you're the one who buys this. So the one little bit of pink in this baby, it's more handmade khadi paper from India. And just to add some fun, I put some little pink tassels, and these can just be flipped up so you can utilize all the writing space. Lots of sari trim tabs. This was a happy accident. I printed some moon phase paper and then I forgot to flip it over before printing the next image, which was from an Indian journal kit. So you wind up with a beautiful gopika, a beautiful Indian woman, and she's kind of visible within the moon. And even though this was an accident, I just love the way it's been layered, like the way you can see her hands in the gibbous moon and kind of her face in the half moon. So I just left it and went with it. This printable from a crystal kit. You can't have magic without crystals, right? the pocket out of this black drippy sort of a trim. Into that pocket I put a genuine vintage postcard of this happy couple feeding some pigeons, and it was actually mailed, I think it was in 1963. So most of the postcards from this collection were from the 60s, but sadly the date kind of got messed up when it was date stamped by the post office. But I think the stamp of Queen Elizabeth looks really pretty. I won't bother reading this, but you can if you want to. Oh, I'll just read it. More pigeons in London than in Cleveland. Isn't that funny? Does that say Cleveland? I think it does. Yeah, spent an hour on the river yesterday. I can't read the signature, but it's kind of fun. So if you've watched some of my other recent journals, you would have seen something like this before. I've printed out these cool old armoires and then made them into pockets where I've hidden fun little things. So in this one, I included a print of a vintage image of the 12 signs of the Zodiac, kind of in animal form. I printed that on some linen paper, so it has a nice painterly texture to it. The back is blank for journaling space. And I lined the inside of this part of the cupboard with some pretty Indian elephant print paper. And then these are just old Dutch book pages that I thought looked kind of cool. The brads on here connect with magnets that I hid behind this when I glued it down. So it does actually stay shut, but you can't really put too much paper in there or else the magnets won't really hold anymore. But I thought that was kind of fun. And then in here, I stuck a beautiful image of Circe. And that's another Waterhouse painting. So also printed on linen paper. I really grunged up the back with some ink to make it look like an antique. And I thought it was kind of fun to let the music paper show through. So I only lined the bottom part here, and that way it turns into not only a little tuck spot there, but also that becomes a pocket. So that's a pocket, and then that's kind of like an upper tuck pocket. So yeah, I think this is another one of my favorite pages. I think it's just fun to open those cupboard doors and see Circe. And the number 444. It's always a lucky number. I put a pentacle, and that's not a symbol of evil. It's a symbol of earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, in case you're unfamiliar. This is just some really pretty scrapbook paper, and I stuck a little booklet within that booklet, and that way, say you want to just throw some paper into your purse for journaling on the go, and you don't want to bring your entire journal with you. There's a cute little one. Star charts and journaling space and a cool ancient jug from Greece. More of that piano paper. A little stamp, vintage stamp. You might recognize that center page from my previous journal if you watched that one too. I love these kind of astronomical pieces. And you might recognize this from the front pocket. So yeah, that just sits in here. It's a nice big pocket. This is the other side of that paper that I accidentally double printed. So you see the worshiper with the goddess, I think her name is Chintamani, and she represents the surrender of the ego by cutting off her own head and serving it on a platter. And it's not meant to be gory and gruesome. It's meant to symbolize surrendering all your worries, surrendering all your doubts, surrendering all your self-limiting beliefs in order to realize the highest consciousness. And so here we have the Oracle of Delphi, or Delphi. I'm never sure quite how to pronounce it because I've heard it both ways, but she is the quintessential magical woman, sitting on her stool above the sacred inner earth vapors, making her predictions. And beneath the oracle, I put an actual stamp from Greece. So a stamp that comes from her homeland, vintage of course. And in this pocket I put a really cool envelope that I made, similar to the paper that I printed for the book, and just stuffed it with some coordinating papers. And on the back I kind of lined them with a washed out paisley pattern so that that can be some journaling space. This is one of the pieces from the Medieval Mirage kit, and I love these papers. I've used them since I started making junk journals, and I just never get tired of them because they're so ornate and so pretty. And then for the little closure tuck, I made a miniature moon out of polymer clay. I had a mold for it, so I made that little mini moon, made it gold with mica powder, and then sealed it with some vegan-friendly sealer. So that's kind of cute. I love putting things in that add texture and dimension. And then in the lower pocket, I made a little mystical moon envelope. The tuck is made from an Italian stamp. I love the look of this ancient looking woman in purple. And then this little envelope has a bluebird of happiness vintage stamp. I hide a bluebird of happiness somewhere in every journal, so that's where it is in this one. And then just some really cute miniature stationery. Blank on the back, so lots of mini writing spaces. I love that Greek stamp, it's so cool. This is a really beautifully textured piece of vintage wallpaper from a Sears wallpaper book from 1928. This is not a print, that's the original, and it's spectacular. Part of an envelope. And then that Waterhouse image. I love how she's sniffing the roses, and there's some William Morris designs in the background. So Art Nouveau, kind of just so pretty. I wish the camera could pick up the dimension. Like, this book is the kind of book, if you put it out on display, like on a coffee table or something, the way it sits just looks so inviting. And in the bottom here, I made a little medallion also out of polymer clay. So the same way I made that tiny moon, made it in a mold, covered it with gold mica dust, baked it, and then glazed it. And it's kind of a repeating pattern. She's sniffing a rose and she's sniffing a lily. And that's why I made all of these papers kind of short so that you can kind of see her when you're flipping them. This is a genuine piece from a Victorian scrapbook, not a print, the real thing. So these pretty fussy cut flowers and leaves are from the 1870s, and they just look so perfect with this piece from the paper cameo. This is a coffee dyed paper doily. I finally realized the big, huge paper doilies that look kind of bland in the middle, if you coffee dye stencil them, they wind up looking really amazing. So that's how I got that look. This little mini pocket out of some sari trim on the back of this paisley holds another genuine piece from that Victorian scrapbook. So this is also 1870s. Blank on the back, so a lot of journaling space. And this is not inked. That is genuine aging. And the reason it's kind of around the border is that this was the paste that glued it into the scrapbook. That beautiful raven from Release the Craft In. There's a French book page that looks kind of cool. I decorated a paper clip with another jewelry jar piece of jewelry. This was kind of fun. This was in a thing of stamps my mom thrifted for me. So not that old, 1985. I hate to call that vintage because it would make me feel old, but it's kind of cool how this little snippet with stamps, somebody actually went to the trouble of writing stamps from France on the back. And so that wasn't me, that was somebody else. And of course, she looks like a magical woman. And then this piece, I'm not sure exactly what it is because it's thicker than paper. It has a really cool aged texture and, you know, some wear on the back. It was $2 at a local antique store. So I guess it could be used as a postcard or something. But the image just reminds me of the Mists of Avalon. This kind of looks like it could be Glastonbury. And I just felt like it feels like the kind of place where you would hang out as a magical woman. So to protect it from the paper clip, I've put that stamp folded over there. And of course, book pages are also great collage backdrops. Another bit of that with some gold sequin sari trim. Another beautiful pagoda. This page, just think of how cool it would look if you write in all of this space and you write in the white space. Don't be afraid to write in your junk journals. They're not meant to be finished pieces, they're meant to be collaborative pieces. So I love this printed star chart. I put a paper doily that I coffee dyed, and I coffee dyed it with a piece of green paper underneath, so it kind of soaked up that color. And I love how it just makes it kind of an interactive star chart. Where the signature was sewn in, I put some beads that kind of go with the color scheme. Like you can see that faded blue and the bright cherry red. And then this one was a vintage earring. And I felt like the color just perfectly goes with the notches and the star charts. Kind of a champagne colored glass. Another really cool astronomical tool. Another piece from Tailor Made Journals kit. So beautiful. This woman kind of lounging against a pillar and Cupid next to her. This is some vintage lace from an antique shop. I pinned a little sun and moon charm to it. There's the other piece of that coffee dyed doily. Lots of journaling space. This envelope has a really cool vintage postcard. It looks so mid-century. Just look at the dresses those ladies are wearing and the chairs at those round tables. Mary Lynn, if you're watching this one, this was from that $10 bag of postcards. It's just such a cool find. So from San Francisco, and on the back you see other San Francisco landmarks. And another Waterhouse woman gazing into her crystal ball. Inked on the back, but lots of writing space. And then here I put a French fairy tale castle with another French woman stamp. Really pretty. And the colors I tried to kind of match to the William Morris design paper on the other side. You can tell I like using this stencil when I coffee dye stuff. Okay, so this is some genuine French ephemera. The texture of the paper is so old and so crinkly, and it looks so cool. Depuratif bleu, so it's some kind of health drink. and they're using a nun to promote it, which is kind of funny. The back is a comic strip. I don't know how old this is. It's probably 1950s or 1960s, but just really cool. And this little piece, I made kind of a belly band or tuck spot with that beautiful bright red sari trim, decorated the envelope with another Waterhouse painting, and I kind of just used this envelope to slide over the other side of this Sears wallpaper stuff. So just to kind of add extra space into the journal. And I put a flower of life charm on it. That was in some happy mail that I got from my friend Ivana this past week, which was really cool. She told me she gets these in some incense that she buys, and she's been kind of saving them and sent them to me because she thought they would go well in journals, and they totally do. So there's the first one used. Another beautiful flower cut from some sari fabric. Lots of journaling space here. This page I made into a pocket using some of my all-time favorite thrifted vintage fabric. I've been hoarding this like you wouldn't believe because I love it so much, but I felt like it just had the vibe for this book. And into the biggest part of that pocket, I put a snippet of another thrifted vintage fabric that I've been hoarding that has such a cool blue frame, or kind of a blue mat on it. And this would be so much fun you could stick your photo into here or write something really special in here. You could kind of sew it down onto something. If you like to sew, you could embroider flowers in the middle. I mean, I don't mean to tell you what to do with your book, but sometimes I think it's nice to get suggestions. But yeah, it's a nice deep pocket. You could put other stuff into there too if you wanted. And then on the other side, I covered up the staples because I stapled this one down with some really pretty kind of gold and wine colored ribbon, and made that into a pocket and an upper tuck where I stuck a piece of vintage paper from a book of really cool translated Italian sonnets. So they're all love songs, kind of sweet. We have our magical woman here being proposed to. So that's kind of just a fun bit of ephemera. And of course you can use all the negative space for journaling, or you could cut it out and use it in a collage of some kind. Beautiful little mermaid, coffee dyed paper, this little pocket, one of my vintage Sri Lankan train tickets that I love to put in books. I didn't write that there, but it looks like my initials. It looks like an SL, kind of like that. Some pretty black sari trim. The other side of that piano paper. Lots of writing space here. That moon moth is so mystical. So I put in another cute little armoire. This isn't a hair, this is from that blue sari trim. So I put a couple of vintage nabob coupons in there. But yeah, this one was so pretty. And I didn't magnetize the upper pockets, but I magnetized, or sorry, upper cabinet doors, but I did magnetize the lower ones. And when it opens up, you see this beautiful picture of the phases of the moon over a mountain range. And I thought it just goes so well with the print from Release the Craftin'. And color-wise, it goes well with this little cabinet too. But yeah, just a little bit of authentic ephemera there. And then I made the cabinet into a pocket, and I put some pages from a 1960s needlepoint magazine. So that's kind of pretty, flower and garden forum. I love the Siamese kitty with that shoe, pussyfooting around. Too bad it's for a leather company, but the cat is still adorable, right? Oh yeah, and happy Easter to those who celebrate Easter. For some reason, the planted barrel reminded me of an Easter basket. So if you do celebrate and you're watching this video at the time that it's posted, that's the day. So this really cool filigree old clip-on earring with some black stones, I've just kind of clipped it onto the sari trim tab here, and it adds a really cool dangly texture bit here. Black stones are said to be protective. They absorb negative energy, so they can be used like an energy vacuum to purify your space and to keep yourself safe and protected and free from anybody's negative thoughts or negative intentions. So very good to have, especially if you choose to use this book like a book of shadows or for some kind of magical work. Black stones are highly protective. I made this tab into a teeny tiny pocket where I put another one of my favorite little things. I made a little miniature envelope out of an old book page, and I stuffed it with a set of 12 prints of stamps from India that feature illustrations for all 12 zodiac signs. So we have Virgo, Leo, Sagittarius, Libra. Well, I don't need to name all of them. I think you can see, but they're so adorable. I bought this set of stamps. I paid more for the shipping than I paid for the actual stamps because I had to order them from India, and I just couldn't resist making them into a set of little miniature journaling cards. They're just so adorable, aren't they? So yeah, the full set of 12, you could use them like oracle cards, or you could add them to collages. And of course, I left the backs blank so you can also use them for journaling. Write down little mini manifestations or something. And I just put a tiny little snippet of sari trim so that you can kind of fold the pocket or fold the flap in and hold it down. So yeah, that little, probably the smallest envelope I've ever made for a specific purpose. I've made mini envelopes for journals before, but this one I made it to a custom size. So this pocket with the moon moth has our cover girl. So this is a bookmark that I made out of that same Waterhouse image, backed with some beautiful deep blue water paper. Another book nook. I love that fairy tale library feeling. Wouldn't you love to curl up in this chair with a nice cup of tea and your stack of books next to you? And that brings us at last to the back. So one of my favorite hoarded bits was this beaded fabric here. It's monochromatic, so it doesn't look maybe as striking from a distance, but when you see it up close, these are all little iridescent navy blue bugle beads with little sequins. Like, the detail is just unbelievable. So there's that same cotty paper, and I stuffed this little pocket full of good stuff. This is just a big piece you can journal on that I decoupaged a napkin onto. This is a little card, just a folded over bit of printed paper. Maybe it goes this way, I guess, because of the tree and the moon. Some tickets. Those are always fun to use in collage work. And then one more piece of jewelry jar jewelry. This was actually part of a necklace from India. Another little picture of Circe. And then this envelope, I printed this image onto handmade paper, and it has little bits of flower petals and stuff in it, so it's really beautiful, really cool texture. And in that I put another little zodiac sign print, all the different, you see the symbol, the name, and an illustration. So it's a really cool guide if you're learning astrology and you'd like to learn what the symbols are for each of the houses, or sorry, for each of the signs. And a full deck of 78 miniature tarot cards printed on sticker paper. So you could give yourself a reading, and you could also stick these down and use them in your crafting or your journaling. So I just randomly pulled a few out. We have the Sun, the Prince of Wands, the Nine of Swords, and the Lovers. And so if I were doing a reading and I pulled these cards out, and I'm not saying this is a reading, but if it resonates with you, you're welcome to accept it if you want. The Sun is all about overcoming our difficulties and finding success in our endeavors. It's all about a new day dawning after failed attempts. So victory. Prince of Wands is all about putting yourself out there to achieve your goals, trying, striving, manifesting. The Nine of Swords is a card of sorrow and also accepting reality for what it is. So kind of like if you tried something and it fails, it doesn't work, you have to mourn the loss of that before you move on to your reinvented self or to your next attempt. And then the Lovers is a card of divine union. So finding somebody who makes you feel fulfilled and who you make them feel fulfilled. Somebody, a partnership in which both partners really want the best for the other. So a very sacred divine union. So seeing these in order would show letting go of what used to be, which makes room for what's meant to be. And that could be romance, it could be friendship, it could be a new career partnership. But how I would read this is these three characters in the first three cards are lone characters. We have the baby under the sun emerging into something new. We have the Prince of Wands standing in his power, but not yet the king, so striving to become somebody. Maybe the Nine of Swords, maybe this sorrowful character is sad because trying to do something on their own hasn't garnered the results they were after. But maybe this character is surrendering their control, surrendering their desire to be alone, and that has created the space in life for somebody new to come in. And so yeah, just hypothetically, if I was giving a reading and these cards came up, that's how I would interpret them. But yeah, you can use these little stickers as a functional tarot deck. All 78 are there. I love these little owl packets for them. They're just super cute. But yeah, you could use those as a deck of little tarot cards, or you could use them as stickers, however you wish. And yeah, the reason I put Circe here is that the paper is so thin and so fragile that it wouldn't have been able to support this beautiful red gemstone piece unless it was reinforced. So there you go. And that brings us again to the back cover. So yeah, there you have it. She is magical. And isn't she magical with all these beautiful things inside? Put Saraswati back in the front where she belongs. So yes, as I do every Saturday, I will make sure that the book is available for purchase in my Etsy shop at the time that I publish the video. If you love it, don't hesitate, because these have been selling pretty quickly after I post them. So I've had messages these past few weeks about other books that I've done flip throughs, people asking, you know, I've gone to your Etsy shop, but I can't find the book. So if you go to my shop and you can't find it, that means it's already sold. But yeah, I hope it brings you some inspiration and some crafty joy, and that if you do buy it, I hope you have as much fun filling it up and looking through all the pages as I had putting them together. And then last but not least, if you've been looking at this big sparkler of a ring on my finger, this was also a stunning find in one of my jewelry jars from an antique sale, a local antique sale. And I couldn't believe how perfectly it goes with the theme of this book. Like, doesn't it look like this Waterhouse woman would be wearing a ring like this one? So that is a gift with purchase to whoever buys this book. Thank you so much again for watching. Happy journaling, happy crafting, and so much love to you. And we'll see you next week for another journal flip through. Bye for now.